Deep within the archives of Oxford's Bodleian Library lie pieces of evidence that would challenge 3 centuries of biblical interpretation. Among their digitized collections sits a 1775 King James Bible version with calendar features that religious orthodoxy prefers to keep in the shadows, perhaps because its temporal revelations expose knowledge that has been systematically erased from collective consciousness. This unique edition contains something that would make Newton tremble with recognition: a 13-month lunar calendar meticulously integrated into the sacred scriptures. The first month began in March, not January, a choice that echoes ancient Celtic and Egyptian traditions, cultures that understood the spring equinox as a gateway of creative renewal. But why exactly was this date chosen? Academic documents reveal that the early church knew about complex temporal systems. Francis Bacon, a member of the secret Rosicrucian Society, left clues about this knowledge in his writings on Novum Organum. He knew that certain times of year dramatically amplified the power of human imagination. The months received peculiar names: Septemberis, Octoberis, ending in the mysterious Lunaris, the 13th cycle that official history chose to forget. Historical records suggest this additional month represented a period of spiritual integration when practitioners developed specific self-suggestion techniques during the 28 lunar days. Neville Goddard, decades later, rediscovered fragments of this knowledge when teaching that imagination is God in action in man. His methods of visualization and emotional assumption find surprising echoes in the traditions of this forgotten Bible. Goddard had studied in Ethiopia and frequented esoteric circles where such wisdom still circulated in whispers. The zodiacal illustrations weren't mere decorations, but diagrams of psychic activation. Each symbol corresponded to specific neurological centers, the pineal gland, solar plexus, limbic system, that modern neuroscientists are only beginning to understand as interfaces between consciousness and physical reality. Dr. Rick Strassman, in his DMT research, discovered that the pineal naturally produces psychoactive compounds during certain lunar phases, scientifically validating ancient practices. The sacred time of this Bible operated as advanced spiritual technology. New moon for implanting mental seeds in the subconscious. Waxing for nourishing visualizations through emotional repetition. Full moon for harvesting manifestations when creative tension reaches its peak. Waning for releasing limiting patterns, allowing space for the new. This process echoes Tibetan Bardo techniques, intermediate states of consciousness where profound transformations become possible. Independent researchers discovered that similar copies circulated secretly among members of European Hermetic societies. Benjamin Franklin, a known Mason and student of electricity, maintained correspondence with circles that used power calendars for both scientific and spiritual experiments. His studies on animal magnetism anticipated modern discoveries about human bioenergetic fields. Why did this temporal technology disappear from official records? The answer may lie in the calendar transformations of the 17th and 18th centuries, when ecclesiastical and political authorities consolidated control over how humanity perceived time. Controlling the calendar means controlling the collective psyche, a power too valuable to remain in common hands. Contemporary practitioners who rediscover these techniques report extraordinary synchronicities when aligning their manifestation practices with lunar cycles. The method is straightforward. During new moon, intensely visualize the desired outcome. During waxing, emotionally feed that visualization. At full moon, enter a state of gratitude as if you've already received it. During waning, release anxieties and expectations. The 13th month Lunaris offers a unique opportunity for deep integration. Historical records suggest specific practices: intermittent fasting, prolonged meditation, and study of Hermetic texts like the Kybalion, a work that curiously emerges from the same historical period as this forgotten Bible. The real question remains: if our ancestors possessed such precise maps for consciousness navigation, what forces orchestrated the collective forgetting? Evidence points to wisdom deliberately fragmented and scattered, awaiting prepared minds to reunify the pieces of this cosmic puzzle. Each individual discovery contributes to the resurgence of this ancestral knowledge, awakening creative capacities that have always been latent in the human species. In ancient times, when the world still pulsed in tune with the sky, there was silent knowledge that crossed cultures, the idea that the divine wasn't distant, but within each one. This was the essence of Gnosticism, a wisdom that didn't ask for blind faith, but direct experience of the sacred through consciousness. And it was this same spark that Neville Goddard, centuries later, reignited in his teachings. Neville didn't speak with the authority of a theologian, but with the clarity of one who had seen for himself. He rescued something the modern world had forgotten: the notion that each human being is a unique expression of universal creative consciousness. And more than that all of us have, right now, the capacity to shape reality with the directed power of imagination. His techniques weren't fantastic inventions, but modern applications of ancestral principles. Assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled, he would say. Feel as if it were already real, and it will be. This practice, often underestimated for seeming too simple, is a profound reinterpretation of original gnosis. The realization that the Christ described in scriptures isn't an external figure, but the creative principle that dwells within us. In other words, awakened imagination. For Neville, imagination wasn't daydreaming. It was the bridge between the invisible and visible, between spirit and matter, and techniques like nightly revision, where the practitioner, before sleeping, mentally recreates the day's events as they would have liked them to be, were true consciousness reprogramming technologies. The affirmation, "I am," repeated with intention, reconnected the individual to their natural state of creative power. All of this, at its root, echoed Gnostic wisdom, inner awakening as the path of return to the divine. What few know is that ancient peoples, especially those connected to Gnostic or pre-Christian traditions, also used time as a tool for spiritual amplification. And here enters a forgotten piece of the puzzle: the 13-month lunar calendar. Unlike the dominant solar calendar, created to control and standardize, the lunar calendar was a living instrument, a true energetic map. Each moon phase offered a distinct quality, a different opportunity to work with mind and spirit. At new moon, cycles were initiated. It was the ideal moment to plant seeds, both in earth and imagination. During waxing moon, these seeds were nourished with emotion, visualization, and faith. Full moon was celebrated as manifestation time, of feeling anticipated gratitude for what was already reality on the invisible plane. And the waning served as space for cleansing, for releasing blockages, beliefs that impede the natural flow of abundance. This synchrony between imagination and nature created rare potency. It was like rowing with the cosmic current. And not coincidentally, this knowledge was being silenced over the centuries. The suppression of Gnostic practices, often considered heretical, wasn't just religious, but strategic. Peoples who practiced gnosis didn't depend on churches, governments, or authorities to access the sacred. They looked within, and that, let's admit, doesn't align with structures that profit from spiritual dependence. Direct connection with the divine was a threat, because whoever knows their power isn't easily manipulated. Whoever knows they can create reality with imagination doesn't accept any imposed narrative. and whoever lives in harmony with earth and sky rhythms finds purpose where others only see routine. Neville Goddard, with his simple and universal vocabulary, modernized this wisdom. He translated for modern times what Gnostics had known for millennia, that scriptures are metaphors, internal maps, allegories of consciousness awakening. When he spoke of Christ, Neville didn't point to the altar. He pointed to each person's creative mind. Christ in you, the hope of glory, he would say. For him, walking on water was mastering fears, healing the blind was opening the eyes of the mind, multiplying loaves was generating abundance with unshakable faith, and all of this, according to him, could and should be aligned with cosmic cycles. Using moon phases as allies isn't mysticism, it's applied spiritual intelligence, visualizing prosperity on the waxing moon, doing forgiveness reviews on the waning, intending new beginnings on the new moon. These practices don't just work, they flow, like a river running toward the sea, effortlessly. This reconnection doesn't require complex rituals or escape to the mountains. It begins with presence, with attention, with the simple gesture of looking at the sky and remembering that you're within a living, intelligent, creative cosmos, and that this same creativity pulses in you. Relearning to work with these temporal windows is a way to reclaim the power that was always ours, the power to co-create our own reality, not as one who tries to convince the universe of something, but as one who remembers who they are, and therefore manifests. Few suspect that the break from ancient planetary cycles represents one of the most subtle and devastating manipulations ever perpetrated against humanity. For millennia, each day of the week functioned as a specific energetic key, an advanced harmonization technology that connected human intention to cosmic frequencies. This wisdom, jealously guarded by the mystery schools of Alexandria, Delphi, and the Chaldean Magi, was systematically dismantled to break our collective manifestation power. Hidden records reveal that the ancients operated with a sophisticated understanding of what we now call chronobiology. Sunday, ruled by the sun, wasn't just a day of rest, but a portal for activating what Carl Jung would call the higher self, that creative force connecting us to personal power centers. The Templars, before their official dissolution in 1314, used this solar energy for leadership visualizations and manifestation of elevated purposes. Neville Goddard, whose teachings were curiously marginalized by academia, independently discovered what secret societies always knew. Feeling is the secret of manifestation. But he went further, perceiving that different planets amplified specific emotional states. The Hermetic manuscripts of Hermes Trismegistus, found in Alexandria's library before its accidental fire, described in detail how each planetary day created a specific window of opportunity. Monday, under lunar influence, opened extrasensory channels that the CIA would later study in their classified remote viewing projects. Ancient priests used these hours to receive prophecies and direct guidance from the collective unconscious. Tuesday, ruled by Mars, intensified determination and courage. Not coincidentally, many historical revolutions began on this day when Martian energy amplified the will for change. Wednesday, under Mercury, accelerated mental processing and clear communication of intentions. Medieval alchemists knew this was the ideal moment for mental transmutation, what we now understand as reprogramming limiting beliefs. Thursday expanded abundance through Jupiter. Great Venetian merchants chose this day to close important deals, intuitively capturing this expansive frequency. Venusian Friday harmonized relationships and creativity, while Saturnian Saturday structured and consolidated manifestations. Benedictine monks, inheritors of knowledge older than Christianity, organized their spiritual practices rigorously following this cosmic schedule. but something changed drastically during the Industrial Revolution. Recently revealed documents suggest that certain influential families perceived the inherent power in this temporal organization and deliberately fragmented it. The standardization of mechanical time, the creation of the work week concept disconnected from planetary rhythms, and the forced secularization of the calendar were steps in a broader project of population control. Contemporary environmental psychology, almost reluctantly, confirms these ancestral wisdoms. Miami University studies documented significant correlations between lunar phases and mood alterations in urban populations. Max Planck Institute research on circadian rhythms reveals that our biology is intrinsically connected to celestial cycles, discoveries that echo ancient shamanic teachings. Dr. Russell Foster of Oxford University demonstrated that the pineal gland responds not only to sunlight, but to specific planetary electromagnetic frequencies. His data, partially censored for national security reasons, suggests that modern temporal fragmentation directly contributes to contemporary epidemics of anxiety, depression, and attention deficit. The esoteric concept of energetic void, created by planetary disconnection, explains why entire generations feel spiritually orphaned even with access to unlimited information. Without a weekly energetic map, we lose the ability to consciously navigate cosmic waves that would exponentially amplify our manifestation practices. Ancient Gnostic texts, like those found at Nag Hammadi, describe specific techniques for each planetary day. For Sunday, sunrise visualizations focusing on personal achievements. Monday, nighttime meditations with water to amplify intuition. Tuesday, physical exercises combined with courage affirmations. Wednesday, automatic writing practices for mental clarity. Thursday, gratitude rituals to expand abundance. Friday, artistic work to harmonize relationships. Saturday, structuring and planning practices. Conscious reconnection with this synchrony doesn't require abandoning contemporary life, but rather recognizing that each week offers a complete cycle of creative development. Some alternative communities already experiment with this approach, reporting significant increases in synchronicities and successful manifestations. Who really benefits from our temporal disconnection remains an open question. What we know for certain is that recovering our attunement to ancient planetary rhythms may be the key to reactivating manifestation capacities that were deliberately put to sleep. The choice to remain fragmented or reconnected to fundamental cosmic cycles defines not only our individual spiritual effectiveness, but the collective destiny of a humanity that can still awaken to its hidden potential. Few realize it, but time, this apparently neutral concept, so present yet invisible, may be one of the most sophisticated control tools ever used on the human mind. The changes that have been applied to the calendar throughout history didn't happen just for astronomical reasons. Behind the technical adjustments, there was always a silent motivation: to shape perception of reality, and with it, limit the reach of human creative consciousness. When Julius Caesar introduced the Julian calendar, he didn't just correct technical flaws in the previous Roman calendar. He did something deeper. He instituted time as political property. The renaming of the month Quintilis to Julius, in honor of himself, was a powerful symbolic maneuver. After all, by baptizing time with his own name, the emperor inscribed himself into eternity, transforming time, which once flowed with natural rhythms, into an instrument of ego and imperial authority. This practice created a precedent. Time ceased to be just a cosmic dance between sun, earth, and moon. It became a territory to be conquered, fragmented, renamed, and above all, controlled. From that moment on, whoever held the power to mark the hours also came to influence how peoples experienced life. Later, Emperor Constantine I would play another decisive role in this symbolic engineering of time. In the 4th century, he officially made Sunday, the day of the sun, originally dedicated to pagan solar worship, the sacred day of Christianity. But the gesture went beyond simple religious conversion. It was a collective reprogramming operation. By capturing the energy of the sun, archetype of individual creative power, will, identity, and redirecting it toward institutional worship, the focus of the inner divine was subtly transferred to external authority. The Day of the Sun, which once celebrated the light within each human being, now demanded devotion to hierarchical structures. This wasn't just a calendar change, it was a displacement of the spiritual power center, from I am to they say I am. Centuries later, this temporal manipulation would reach its peak with the Gregorian reform of 1582. Officially, Pope Gregory XIII created the Gregorian calendar to correct an astronomical discrepancy in the Julian calendar. But in practice, what happened was much more symbolic and profound. 10 days were literally erased from history. From October 4th, it jumped directly to October 15th. Now imagine, if time is a collective construction of reality, what happens when an authority simply decides that 10 days didn't exist? This wasn't just a technical correction, it was a ritual of restart, a rewriting of collective memory, a true magical act, in the esoteric sense of the word, intended to further centralize control over the notion of time and with it, over mass consciousness. Neville Goddard, the 20th century mystical thinker, said, "You are the operative power of your reality." In other words, reality is shaped by what you believe, feel, and project. But how do you maintain that inner power if the very compass of time we use to organize our thoughts and actions isn't ours? If the rhythm we follow was imposed to disconnect us from natural cycles and ancestral wisdom? The imposition of the Gregorian calendar on various countries wasn't immediate, and this is revealing. Many kingdoms resisted, maintaining their lunar, solar, or hybrid calendars, which reflected more organic rhythms, often aligned with agriculture, moon phases, solstices, and equinoxes. These peoples knew that time wasn't just an organizational tool, it was a sacred language, a code that connected heaven to earth, human beings to the cosmos. When these resistances were being erased, one after another, the world began to operate in a single rhythm, that of the machine, industry, productivity at the expense of spiritual connection. Time was reduced to deadlines, goals, busy hours, and alarms. And human creativity, once inspired by seasons, harvests, and stars, came to fit into schedules and timetables. Understanding this history is an invitation to liberation, not a romantic liberation of complete rejection of the current system, but a call to consciousness. By perceiving that time is also a technology of the mind, a tool for creating realities, the individual can begin to rebuild their own cycles with intentionality and autonomy. This can start simply, synchronizing with moon phases to plan projects, observing the body's own rhythms instead of living under constant pressure, or even creating personal rituals at key moments of the month or year, rescuing a sense of sacred, personal, and organic time. Books like Time and the Sacred by Mircea Eliade help understand how ancestral cultures treated time as sacred, and how this profoundly influenced their actions and beliefs. What's at stake here is more than a debate about calendars. It's each person's right to reconnect with their creative power, free from the imposition of artificial rhythms. Because, deep down, whoever defines your time also defines your inner space, and consequently, the reality you're capable of manifesting. And perhaps, by reconnecting with these forgotten rhythms, the individual realizes that true time isn't in clocks or calendars, but in the quality of presence with which one lives each moment. And it's precisely in this presence that the next step of the journey begins. In an increasingly accelerated and artificial world, something essential has been getting lost: the connection with the rhythms that have always guided human life, natural cycles. And this disconnection isn't just an environmental or cultural phenomenon. It's above all a collective spiritual amnesia that's silently undermining our capacity to manifest, to create, to transform desire into reality. The way we celebrate time today reveals this inversion of values. New Year's, for example, is celebrated in January, a month that, in the Northern Hemisphere, marks the height of winter. Nature is withdrawn in deep silence in gestation. Yet at this exact moment of cosmic quietude, we're told to make plans, set goals, start projects, and explode in celebrations. This would be like trying to plant seeds in frozen soil, expecting lush harvests. Nature, which for millions of years was our inner compass, is now ignored as if it were just a static backdrop. The symbolism of this choice isn't random. January represents going against the grain of renewal energy. In contrast, ancestral cultures celebrated the new cycle in March, during the spring equinox, when light and shadow balance and earth begins, finally, to awaken. It's at this moment that life returns to pulse, that sap rises through branches, that fields open for planting. Everything cooperates for the new, and our ancestors knew this intuitively. Neville Goddard, the great student of manifestation, said that, to create, one must be emotionally aligned with what one desires. That is, manifestation isn't an intellectual force. It's born from the heart, from feeling, from vibration. And for thousands of years, ancient peoples understood that there were right moments to plant, both in soil and in mind. It wasn't superstition. It was attunement to the whole. Today, instead, we follow corporate calendars, commercial agendas, and social expectations. The wisdom of planting at the right time was traded for fixed dates and conventions. We began seeking answers from external sources, gurus, systems, manuals. And here's a potent metaphor. We became dependent on emotional planting tables created by others, completely ignoring our own internal barometer. The loss of this creative autonomy can also be seen in how we treat religious festivities. Christmas, for example, carries origins much older than Christianity. Originally, it was a ritual of light's rebirth, celebrated just after the winter solstice. It was the turning point when the sun, after reaching its minimum, began to grow again in the sky. It was a call to look within, recognize the darkness, and prepare the soul for light's return. However, what was introspection has now become rush. What was symbolism has become showcase. Instead of looking inward, we look at store windows. Spirituality was traded for consumption, and with it, we lost a powerful window of inner manifestation. Easter still maintains a subtle connection with lunar cycles. The date changes every year because it's defined by the first full moon after the spring equinox. This detail, almost always ignored, is crucial. Ancient peoples believed the full moon was the peak of manifestation energy. It was the moment to harvest what had been planted with intention weeks before. Celebrating Easter was, symbolically, celebrating the resurrection not only of Christ, but of human creative energy itself. Today, the festivity has become synonymous with chocolate and commercial calendars. The connection to celestial cycles remains there, discreet, but collective consciousness no longer perceives it. This alienation worsened with urban advancement. In cities, seasons barely distinguish themselves. Night is artificially illuminated. Time is no longer felt. It's chronometered. And thus, we lose touch with moments when our energy is naturally elevated or withdrawn. How many people today know when their body and mind ask for action and when they ask for silence? How many can hear this call? What once was lived with spontaneity now requires relearning. And here's the essential point. Reconnecting to natural cycles isn't bucolic romanticism, nor nostalgia for simpler times. It's a practical necessity. For those seeking to manifest their dreams with consciousness and power, it's necessary to return to living in harmony with movements that govern life on all planes, physical, mental, and spiritual. This can begin with small gestures, observing the sky, for example, noticing what phase the moon is in, noting when days begin to lengthen or shorten, planning important actions for moments of expansion like spring and summer, and reserving moments of introspection for autumn and winter. Using the lunar cycle as a guide to intend, act, and harvest. There are various traditions that teach this, like the biodynamic calendar, used by farmers conscious of Earth's rhythm, or the lunar practices of shamanism. Rescuing this perception returns a sense of sovereignty to us, a sense that, yes, there's an order in the universe, and it's not in clocks, but in cycles. The person who aligns with these rhythms discovers that manifestation ceases to be a mental effort and becomes a natural flow. And in this flow, everything seems to conspire in our favor. Because deep down, the true magic of manifestation was never about making it happen. It was always about remembering when it's the right time to act, and allowing nature itself, in us and around us, to show us the way. True spiritual awakening doesn't happen when we merely understand intellectually that we've been conditioned by artificial temporal structures. True awakening happens when we decide, with silent conviction and conscious practice, to recover sovereignty over our own time, and with it, over our energy, our focus, the course of our reality. This revolution begins in the most subtle and powerful field that exists, the intimacy of personal practice. It's when a person chooses, for example, to align their days with Earth's rhythms instead of blindly obeying the demands of an industrialized agenda. It's at the moment when they honor their internal cycle of withdrawal, even though the world around says it's time to produce. It's when they decide to sow their intentions with the new moon and harvest their fruits under the full moon. It's there, in this apparently small space, that a silent revolution begins to unfold. Changing how we begin the year may seem merely symbolic, but it's a powerful spiritual affirmation. Starting the year at the March equinox, when the planet awakens from winter dormancy, when light and shadow balance and fields prepare to flourish, is actually an act of profound reconnection. It's not just a date change, it's a rhythm choice. It's declaring, I align with the cycle of life, not the cycle of the machine. It's initiating new projects when Earth itself inspires, literally, a new breath of life. And this change doesn't need to stop at the equinox. When we start living consciously of lunar cycles, each month ceases to be a simple counting of days. It becomes an energetic journey. Each moon phase offers us a key, a door to specific inner work. New moon invites us to intend with clarity, waxing to nourish with action, full moon to celebrate and harvest, waning to release, cleanse, heal. Dedicating each lunation to a theme, like emotional healing, strengthening intuition, creating abundance, or improving relationships, we create a living and organic structure for self-knowledge. This practice transforms personal development into something sustainable, rhythmic, integrated with nature. It's what Neville Goddard called psychological shaving, that delicate work of constant revision of our inner state. Like a sculptor who, with patience, refines their work every day. For those seeking to put this into concrete practice, using an astrolunar journal is a powerful tool. More than recording appointments, it becomes a mirror of the soul. In it, we note dreams, visions, synchronicities, emotions, and manifestations. Over time, patterns emerge. We discover in which phases our creativity elevates, when intuition intensifies, which dates are more fertile for certain desires. This type of personal map is a true spiritual GPS. There's no app in the world that offers something as precise as cyclical self-knowledge. But no inner revolution needs to be solitary. Study and practice groups, even if small, play a fundamental role in this process. Just like in ancient gnostic communities, the collective space of investigation isn't based on dogmas, but on living exchange of experiences. It's there, in the sincere sharing of a vision, doubt, or successful manifestation, that confidence in one's own creative power strengthens. These groups become consciousness incubators. It doesn't matter if they're in-person meetings or virtual circles. What matters is the energy field that forms. Because when a person shares their inner victory, they open the way for others to also believe. And when someone crosses a blockage and reveals their overcoming, this learning echoes, propels, inspires. All of this points to a broader vision of society, one where time is no longer a sequence of numbers, but a living organism. A culture where the equinox is celebrated not as an astronomical curiosity, but as a sacred moment. Where planetary days are recognized not as superstition, but as aspects of a cosmic dance that influences our mood, clarity, and manifestation power. Imagine living in a world where Mondays are dedicated to emotional care and introspection, Day of the Moon. Tuesdays to determined action, Day of Mars. Wednesdays to communication, Mercury. And so on, not to bind us to fixed rules, but to navigate with the wind in our favor, aligned with greater forces, not adrift. This isn't regression, as many might think. It's evolution. The integration of ancestral wisdom with modern and awakened consciousness. It's the union of tradition with intuition, science with the sacred mechanical time with lived time. Because, deep down, inner revolution is this, remembering that time isn't the enemy. It's a technology, and when used with consciousness, it transforms into our greatest ally in the awakening process. And this transformation begins now with a simple decision, reclaiming your place as a conscious co-creator of your reality. Every change begins with understanding your role as co-creator, and the only way to connect with this divine intelligence is through meditation. Therefore, we've developed a set of audio tools specially created to help you access higher states of consciousness aligned with natural cycles. If you feel this is the moment to reconnect with what is true in you, click the link on screen or in the comments for immediate access. If this video resonated with you, write in the comments. It made sense to me.